Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me again tonight as we're on our last night discussing how we can establish better relationships. Tonight's subject is relationship rescue. Relationship rescue, that is our subject tonight. So we're exploring ways how we can rescue a relationship before it dissolves or before it ends. Because we know that relationships take work on all parts, and if it's worth putting in the work, then we have to have reasonable and practical ways to save it if it's worth saving, guys. So I appreciate you guys sacrificing to be here with me tonight. The subjects that we talk about are just a spin-off of my book, Recreating a Better Me. If you don't have your copy, you can get this copy on Amazon. It is also available on Kindle and audio versions. So if you're one of those like me that like to have somebody else do the reading for you and you listen and learn, Audible would be a good resource for you to include into your library. As always, go ahead and like and share this video as you're logging on to be here with me tonight. You keep me encouraged and motivated to live out my purpose and do what I do. So I am so grateful that you tune in with me throughout these series of lives that I do. So this is our last video on relationship. Tomorrow we will be going into health and wellness in light of the COVID-19 coronavirus that is affecting our nation all around. I think it is well needed. So we'll be moving into that on tomorrow. Nonetheless, let's talk about rescuing our relationships. Number one, assess whether or not the relationship is worth saving. That's first and foremost. There's nothing worse than fighting for something that is not worth saving. We waste our time. We spend a lot of energy. And I always have to think back to my earlier relationships in life, earlier friendships, earlier jobs, just whatever the relationship I was in, how I was always looking for a way out before I even got started good. So now it's my mindset is different. Now I look for reasons to stay. And so first and foremost, in whatever relationship you have to do the work, because we talked about all the negative stuff that could go on. So now we have to decide whether or not the relationship is worth saving. And it's just as simple as that. If it's worth saving, then let's do the work tonight. If it's not worth saving, then we have some tough choices to make. And for each of us, it's going to be different. It's just going to be a different protocol for each relationship because we're all different. It's not going to be a one size fits all in anything that we sit here and discuss, because what's good for me may not be good for you. What you're able to tolerate in your relationship, I may not be able to tolerate it as well. So we can't take that advice from a friend the way that they perceive whether they'll stay or not. This is something you really have to look deep within yourself and decide, is my relationship worth saving? And if it's a yes, you're in the right place, because that's all we're talking about tonight. We're talking about those things that are worth saving, and we're in it for the long haul. So Number 2, forgive one another and reestablish the conditions within the relationship. Forgive one another and together reestablish the conditions within the relationship. If your relationship is on the verge, if it's on the brinks, if it's close to the breakup, together you guys have to be willing to reassess the conditions of the relationship. This is something that means you're going to have to communicate with each other. And the only way that you're going to be able to communicate without the frustration and the emotions coming all in it is first, after realizing that the relationship is worth saving and it's worth sticking it out for the long run, because we know relationships hit tough patches. In order to do that, you have, when you decide it's worth saving, you have to then forgive. You have to forgive one another. And then come together and communicate, and let's reevaluate the conditions within this relationship. And that takes teamwork. Because you can say, yes, my relationship is worth saving. But we know that relationships are between two people, right? So how are you going to know how the other feels, or whether they believe that the relationship is worth saving? How you know if they're going to commit if you don't have that communication? And it's all about, like I said the other day, hitting that reset button. And that's so hard for a lot of us to do. You have to forgive. It is absolutely necessary. Some things are harder to forgive than others. But how can you move forward and save a relationship by dragging in the broken pieces for which the relationship that caused the relationship to go south in the first place? Right? So going back to those videos that we talked about on mindset, if you work on yourself and you understand how the mind operates, if you take the steps and do the work, and even the work that I have lined out in my book, if you hadn't got that book, that's a good resource. I can't say it enough. If you do the work on your mindset and what it takes to reconstruct your thoughts and to get all those emotions and learning how to forgive and understanding what it does for you, if you do that, you can actually forgive without all the hurt dragging up in your face every time something happens that causes you to think back. You can think back with all the anger and the bitterness and the emotions when you learn how to get those things under control. Okay? So, number 1, we said that it is worth saving. Number 2, we have to forgive. And if you're not willing to take that step to forgive, then you're defeating your purpose. We know that the Word of Life talks about you can't put new wine in old wineskin. Well, to me, it gives me a revelation is that you can't create new relationships with an old mindset. It just doesn't fit. It continues to box you in. If you're not willing to put new things in your mind and willing to live a life of freedom in forgiveness, then you're really being a hindrance to yourself. And how can you go and do all these other things with this thorn still in your flesh? Every time someone shows up, or every time you hear a sound, or every time something causes your mind to go back, all these old emotions continue to resurface. So we have to learn what it takes to learn to forgive for those of us that have problems in this area. Because I guarantee if you don't take this step number 2 seriously by forgiving and reestablishing the conditions of the relationship, you're going to find yourself right back to square one. And then we'll have to do the steps all over again, guys. So it is necessary. And there is a freedom in it. Thank you guys for joining me tonight. Tonight we're talking about rescue, relationship rescue. If you're here with me, go ahead and like and share this video so that others on your timeline can enjoy the video with us as well in the conversation. Also, if you have a comment, please feel free to leave it in the comment section. I love to get back with you and exchange chat with you and address all your questions and or comments that you have. Number 3, it may be necessary for you to seek outside help from a trained professional. It may be necessary for you to seek outside help from a trained professional, trained in the area of relationships, have had professional training in the area of relationships. Because a lot of times I find that we seek help from maybe a minister who hasn't been trained, and that's okay if that's what you do. We seek help from friends, other married couples, and that's okay if that's what you do. But if your relationship is in such a disarray that you find yourself fighting and there's confusion every day and you having a difficult time getting past step 1 and 2, professional help may be necessary. And make sure that they're trained in the area of relationships. There's all kinds of counselors. There's all kinds of psychiatrists. Are they trained in the area of relationships? Okay? I try to steer away from going to our pastor if it's something dealing with our relationship and our pastor has a relationship with both of us. That's kind of like a dual relationship. They love both of us, and sometimes it's kind of hard getting past seeing us. They want what's best for us, and sometimes you can't always get that unbiased help that you need because they want to really help you. They want to see you in a good place, but sometimes I'd rather, if someone was having an issue and they were coming to consult with me, I'd rather that I not have a close relationship with them. That way, so I won't tend to lean to one side or another, and that they could get the unbiased help that they need. So we really have to be careful with that. And that's my opinion. You guys have to do what you feel like is best for you. So I would consider seeking out a professional who maybe don't know a whole lot about either one of us, and that way we could lay the issues out on the table and that we could get some professional, unbiased assistance for those situations that are more severe. Okay? We're talking tonight about relationship rescue. We're up to number 4. Number 4 is to plan some uninterrupted time with your partner on a regular basis. Plan some uninterrupted time with your partner on a regular basis. I don't know how many times I've heard we just don't spend enough time together. And as sad as it may seem, sometimes you have to plan time with your partner, especially if both of you are working full time, especially if you have other demands outside of work that you have to meet. So take me and my spouse, for instance. He works a full-time job, and then when he gets off work, he's going to work. And then I work a full-time job, and when I get off work, I'm still working. So if we're going to have some uninterrupted time together, then we have to make plans for that sometimes. And maybe your situation is a little different. Maybe you have time to spend together, but it's not uninterrupted because you have the kids, and then you have family, and then you have friends that want to drop by, and so on and so forth. I don't know what your situation is, but we said that this relationship is worth saving. We said that we're forgiving and establishing new conditions, and we're communicating about it. And if we are in a serious situation, we're getting counseling and help. So now we have to get to know one another. And the only way we can get to know one another and establish a new relationship within our relationship, we have to spend time together. And it has to be uninterrupted time. That may mean turning the phone off for 2 hours while we have our time. That may mean don't answer the door when someone comes knocking during that 2-hour uninterrupted time. That may mean we have to go and take a drive to the park for 2 hours so that we can get away from the chaos at home or whatever. Whatever it means for you, you have to be willing to sacrifice and do just that. Number 5, you have to then replace the toxic habits with healthy habits. Now, we talked about the toxic behaviors last night. So we identify, we know what they are, but you know, like I know, you don't just take a habit and get rid of it without replacing it with something else. So we've identified those toxic habits. Now, in order to eliminate or to develop other habits, we have to replace those toxic habits with new, healthier habits. So whatever those toxic behaviors were that you can identify with, now is the time that we start replacing them with new, healthier habits. Because we don't want the old relationship. The old relationship didn't work. And we can't do the same thing expecting to get different results. So we've identified what those toxic behaviors are. We also mentioned how to build healthy relationships. Go back and listen to that. And what can we put in the place of those things that were toxic in our relationship? Right? And this, remember guys, this is something that we're doing together. This is not just, unless I'm just the whole problem in the relationship. Now, if I'm the sole problem in the relationship, that's one thing. But oftentimes it takes two. And so if I'm toxic and he's toxic, we have to be willing to do these things together. I think that the relationship gets in trouble when it's one-sided in the first place. So we don't want to go back and do the same thing that we were doing, still being selfish individuals, trying to make a relationship between two people work, because we know that it does not work that way. So we got to replace it with healthier habits. So we'll go back and research and read and learn, what does it take to build healthy relationships? What are healthy behaviors to take within the relationship? And that's what we'll look at. And that's what we'll begin to put in place of these toxic behaviors. Because if you immerse yourself into learning healthier behaviors, eventually it's going to click. Eventually it's going to sink in, and that mindset is going to begin to shift. And you're going to be thinking about more positive ways to interact with your partner. And that takes getting to know each other. That takes communicating. That takes forgiving and resetting that reset button and reestablishing the relationship. Remember, we don't want the old relationship. It didn't work. We can't continue to do the same thing and get the different results. So we have to implement a new plan so that our relationship then becomes new and healthier, because it's worth saving. We've already established that. We're here down here on number 5 because we said it was worth saving and that we were willing to commit to the process. So when we're ready to do that, then we're not saying that these things are going to happen overnight, but once we change our environment and commit to the learning and shifting our mindsets and doing all that it takes up until this point, we can see that we're going to begin to feel a little better within our relationship and see that it's making progress. So when it begins to shift and turn for the better, then we know that we're a work in progress and we'll continue to work toward that progress, whatever it takes, right? All right. Number 6, touch each other more frequently and spontaneously, more often. Because I can almost imagine in this little mind of mine that if our relationships is on the brink of dissolving, that we're not touching each other hardly at all. Because if I don't like you, I probably don't want you touching me. So when we commit to the steps, then we add up to this point. This time that we're going to spend with each other, uninterrupted, we need to touch one another. We maybe need to flirt with one another in a healthy way, right? It's something about touch that stimulates something in our brain that causes us to want to be close and a little more intimate, right? Okay, so we have to be willing to do it not as if we're forced or negligent to do it, but just spontaneously. You know, my husband may be in the kitchen washing dishes or something. I may go over and put my arms around him or something. You know, it makes people feel good to know that you notice them. And you may not say anything, but just a simple touch, it just kind of does something to the relationship. We maybe had a disagreement, and maybe it's where, well, I don't want to talk to you at this time. Just a simple touch seems to make everything okay. That's communicating, guys. You don't always have to have words to communicate. So if you're putting forth the effort to work on the relationship and help make this relationship something better, touch is necessary. Touch is necessary. And you may not like it all that well, but do it every now and then and be spontaneous. Do something out of the norm every now and then and see, doesn't it make a difference? See, doesn't it put a smile on his or her face? See, doesn't it make them want to return the touch later down the line, later that day when you've forgotten all about it? It makes a difference. One positive action causes a positive reaction a lot of times. Now you may have one that's not willing to work on the relationship with you, and you'll see what kind of reaction you get when you try to say something or try to touch them, and they're snapping at you and not really willing to work on it. But when you learn how to engage positively and respond positive to people that may not be at that level to where they can be positive in return with you, then if it's worth working out, you'll get there. It's hard for me to stay upset or mad or angry with someone who's continually giving me positive feedback. It just doesn't work that way. There has to be something totally evil or something totally wrong with someone who is constantly told positive things and shown positive things, and they continue to react in a negative manner. So just give it a try. And we're, like I say, we're not saying it's going to work overnight. We're not necessarily saying this is where your issue is, but it's just tools, practical ideas set in line. You decide what's best for you and your partner, and you and your relationship. Thank you guys for joining me tonight. I'm glad you're here. If you're just logging on with me, go ahead and like and share this video. If you understand what I'm saying so far, go ahead and hit those heart buttons so that I know that you're here. Also, you can leave me a comment in the comment section or a question, and I'll be glad to address that with you later tonight. All right, we're up to number 7. Monitor and reevaluate the romance. Monitor and reevaluate the romance. Now, I have problems in this area because I'm not your most romantic butterfly. So oftentimes I feel like I'm negligent in this area. And I've heard several married couples say that, and mainly on the spouse, on the husband side, that they love their marriage, they love their wives, but they'd like to have a little more romance in the relationship. Now, ladies, we can do one of two things here. We can continue to ignore his request for just a little more romance in the relationship, or we can take heed to his request and put forth the effort to include a little more romance within the relationship. Now, and that's what it all boils down to. If they can conform and heed to our requests, any and everything that we're bossing them around and wanting them to do, surely this is something that we can consider for our spouse, for that one that we love so much, right? And yeah, it's going to take a little effort, even for me. I'm sitting here thinking right now, as I'm sitting here telling you and sharing that with you, I'm sitting here thinking, Lord, that's going to take a wing and a prayer. But when we think about it, it really doesn't take much effort to put into it. It really doesn't. It's just about loving him and considering his needs enough that you'll make a small effort to make some changes, right? It's not asking too much. Not for someone who loves you and adores you, and that's what they ask. So if your spouse is one of those and he's made his request known, then we have to be considerate of that. And that's something that we can negotiate in number 2 when we reconsider the conditions of the relationship. You know, that may be something we put in number 4, where we have that uninterrupted time together. Wherever it fits for you, if that's an issue for you and that's been a request made to you and you've ignored it like I have because you really just did not want to do it, or maybe that we didn't know how to include romance, all it takes is a little reading, a little research, a little conversation. It doesn't take much, guys. So that's one thing to consider. Rescuing the relationship. We don't want the old relationship. We want to establish newness within our relationship. We want to try new things. New wine in a new wineskin. We can't take the new wine and put it in the old wineskin, the old mindset. So it's about shifting our mindset, having that self-confidence. They love us no matter what. And if it's just a little thing that that's missing on their part, because a lot of times they're simple, they really don't require much. We can do that. We can do that. All we have to do is make them a priority. We have to make that little sacrifice, right? All right, number 8. Be willing to speak your truth when you're communicating. And that's with any relationship. A relationship that has dissolved or that is on the verge of breaking up, you have to re-establish healthy boundaries for communication. You can't continue to neglect your feelings or your needs, your desires. Continue to pretend. Remember, I talked about pretending like we do. We can't continue to pretend. We have to speak our truth, whatever that is. And we have to respect the truth spoken of the other person, of our mate. So if their truth hurts our feelings, we have to be willing to accept that that's their truth, respect it, and try to figure out how we can continue to move forward. Being able to have that openness, being able to have that affirmation that we're not expecting them to read our minds anymore. And if they like it, they like it. And if they don't like it, they don't like it. But we're not going to fall out behind it. We're not going to cause ourselves to be bitter behind it. We're going to respect one another's truths. And that's not to get mad and throw it up in their face later down the line. It is a line of respect, and we're not going to break those boundaries. Speaking our truth and respecting the truth spoken by the other party. Number 9, say at least 5 words of appreciation each day. Do you know how unappreciated some of us feel in relationships? And just a kind word here and there, a word of appreciation. Do you know how healing and therapeutic that is? I may cook 5 days a week, and I may know that my family enjoys that meal that I cook because there's nothing left. And they go in and eat as much as they want all day long. But don't you know it makes me feel good as a wife or as a mother to hear them say, boy, that was good today. I don't know what it is that you put together today, but it was delicious. Thank you. You know, if we could just focus on positive, and sometimes, like I mentioned last night, sometimes it's hard to find the positive when there's so many negative things going on. But if we are intentional in speaking at the least now, you can say more, at the least 5 positive words or phrases to our significant other every day, do you realize what an impact that would make over a week's time, over a month's time, over a year's time within that relationship? Especially when you're adding all this other stuff to it, all the touch and the time together, uninterrupted time together, and the romance. And do you know what that would do for our relationships? Now, we're quick to focus on the negative. Oh, you didn't take the trash out. You didn't wash the dishes. You didn't cook. You didn't clean. You didn't do the laundry. You didn't fold the laundry. We're quick to focus on the negative things. If we could just find space for 5 positive comments per day, 5 per day, 7 days in a week, I can almost promise you that it will have quick results, quick turnarounds. Because like I said, you're not going to keep saying positive things and interacting in a positive manner to people and they just continue to treat you like slum under their shoes. That's just not going to happen. If you're in a situation like that, maybe you didn't answer number 1 correctly. Maybe it wasn't worth saving, guys. Because I just cannot see any normal, healthy brain or any normal, healthy mindset reacting in a situation like that to positive things and continue to feed out negativity and hate and anger. I just don't see it working like that. Right? And number 10, be trusting and confident enough to have your own life outside of the relationship. Be trusting and confident enough to have your own life outside of the relationship. Be trusting and confident enough to have your own life outside of the relationship. 2 codependent people depending on one another for their happiness and can't trust, so they have to be up under you 24 hours a day and know what you're doing and who's calling and where you're going. And not in 2020. Life too short. So if you don't have your own life outside of the relationship, no wonder you're miserable. I love my husband. I love my kids. I love my job. But outside of all that, I still have a life. I still have goals and aspirations that I want to achieve. And I can't do that sitting up under them all day and night. And sometimes that takes sacrifice. And sometimes, other things have to be rearranged. But if I can do the steps and fit all of this in so that our relationship can be rescued, surely I can take a little time for myself to have a life outside of my relationships. Right? And to some people say, no, I can't trust them to do that. I can't. Well, go back and do the steps. And we're not saying that any of this is going to happen overnight. But guys, you need a life outside of your relationship. How else are you going to feel fulfilled? And how else are you going to live out your purpose? How else are you going to serve others if you don't have a life outside of your relationship? So all these go hand in hand, guys. It does. I appreciate you guys joining me tonight and being here with me every night for our series on better relationships. Better relationships, I believe, is chapter 4 in my book. So if you don't have this book, like I said, get a copy. Hit me up. I have a few copies here on hand. I'd be glad to put one in the mail for you guys. Tomorrow we're going to move on talking about health and wellness, because I feel like that it is the next best thing to discuss amid all of the situations going on in our world around us. I hope that you enjoyed the relationship series with me. Go ahead and like and share this video if you haven't already. I just enjoy being here with you every night. And I hope that you are enjoying being here and having a conversation with me as well. Don't forget to leave your comments and your questions. I'd like to interact with you. Also, me and Malaya Bray, my co-host, we have teamed up to put together a Easter giveaway for all you ladies out there that have joined us, and for any men out there that want to take part. We'll even be willing to put together a little Easter something for you as well. So we'll give more details on that giveaway in the coming days. So we're excited about it. We know that the basket that we're putting together so far has already accumulated over $350 worth of value. So for you women out there who may be looking down the road and you see Easter as maybe going to be a damper, we want to brighten it up for you. So we want to have a little fun with it. And so there's going to be several ways down the over the next week or so that you're going to be able to get your name in the drawing for that giveaway. I think you're going to love it, guys, and I am excited. All right, we'll see you again tomorrow night. Have a good night.